Well, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump went head-to-head last night in their much-anticipated U.S. presidential debate.
Kamala Harris, let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor.
The two took to the stage in Philadelphia with no audience present. It was seen as offering Americans their most detailed look at a campaign that's dramatically changed since President Joe Biden bowed out of the race. The heated debate covered a range of topics from the economy to abortion, immigration, the January 6th riots, and Trump's legal rules.
Are you better off than you were for
millions and millions of people to come into our country and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States? And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
How you doing?
I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election.
And for a closer look at last night's debate, we're joined live by John Micek, politics editor at MassLive.com. John, good afternoon. I don't even know where to start, so I'm just going to say, what is your take?
Bakari, good afternoon. Nice to be with you again. Vice President Harris last night, though many Americans know her, it was really an opportunity for her to reintroduce herself to the American public, and you can make a pretty credible argument that she did it in fine style. This is what happens when you are a former prosecutor. It was watching her, I've covered courts, setting trap after trap for the former president to walk into, needling him, as we saw in that tape a moment ago, on his reputation among world leaders, about the crowd sizes at his rallies, about his criminal travails. Again and again, we saw Harris needling the former president, and again we saw the former president losing his temper. The analysis here in the United States is that the vice president walked away with a win, and that is a pretty compelling narrative.
Okay, so you had the moderators, David Muir and Lindsey Davis. Let's talk about the real-time fact-checking, during the debate. What about that effect?
There have been some arguments in Republican circles this morning, Bakari, that Muir and his colleague were biased in favor of the vice president. That wasn't the case from where I was sitting. You saw, I'm sorry, I forget Lindsey's last name, but fact-checking the former president on his assertions about abortion, him falsely claiming that babies could be executed after birth, and her just calmly saying that that's not legal in any state in the United States. You saw David Muir stepping up and fact-checking the president with his claims about migrants in the Midwest eating dogs and cats. The city manager in that particular community saying there is no evidence of that at all. It was a pretty welcome thing to see them sort of stepping up and fact-checking the former president on the fly. So, John, also the microphones were supposed to be muted. It almost didn't seem like that, because whenever they started talking, you actually heard what they were saying. You heard the crosstalk. More than once, former President Trump would jump in to rebut something Vice President Harris said. You could hear them turn his microphone back on again. That was supposed to be a fairly ironclad rule. That turned out not to be the case. And I guess, Bakari, you could make the argument that it made for a more lively debate, even though that was not supposed to be the ground rules. And speaking of, let's talk about decorum. At the beginning, you have Harris walking over, on the Trump side to shake his hand, and then they began. Let's talk about that setting the stage for the rest of the evening. That was a pretty big power play, I got to say, on the part of the vice president to walk directly into the former president's space. You could tell from his body language that he was a little taken aback by that and was not quite sure how to respond. Bakari, it's a political truism that whoever takes control of a debate within the first 15 minutes is more than likely to go on to win the evening. And that certainly seemed to be the case last night.
Okay, so let's talk about the preparation that went into this, because we know that Kamala Harris has a background as a prosecutor. So, debate, that's in her blood.
That is true. It is also true that the former president is a seasoned debater. He's now been through 2 presidential cycles of primary debates and general election debates. He had 1 debate with President Joe Biden back in July. So he did come to the table with a good deal of experience, but I don't think he was prepared really for the prosecutorial way that Kamala Harris came at him on Tuesday night. This is the same woman, it bears noting, that got future U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh to admit in U.S. Senate that there is no existing American law that governs men's body, while there are plenty of laws that govern women's bodies.
Okay, and as we wrap up, let's talk about public perception, because there was a lot of posting on social media last night and even more this morning.
That is true. Debates like this should move the needle in public opinion, Bakari. It remains to be seen whether it will move the needle in public opinion. They came into the debate last night in a statistical dead heat. This is going to remain a race that remains tight to the very end. The next round of public polling we see in the next week or so will tell the story. Certainly, independent voters, the Washington Post has been reporting about this today, independent voters in swing states who were skeptical about the vice president were on her side by the end of the evening. We'll have to see if that moves in any significant direction.
All right, John Micek, politics editor at MassLive.com. Thanks a lot for your time this afternoon.